with the end of book one and the beginning of book two. And so, per Michael, and Michael commented at the end of our last session that he really wanted to see what the ending of book one would be like. Was anticipating a great significant ending. So I want to hear what you think in terms of what this ending is.
It's very melodramatic.
It was very melodramatic.
Melodramatic because she's falling, running after the train.
Right.
And I don't remember this part, but this chapter was brutal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, as I said, we'll work our way backwards and just find all of the ways that these things.
The last paragraphs mentioned, it's he's Leo saying, "Don't run after the train. Don't cause anything," because he knew she was going to. And the desperation and the melodrama and the holding on to the rails. It was like a black and white early silent movie.
It was.
With the woman and then the guard or the guy, the conductor, jabbing her in the breast and kicking her off dislodging her from the railing.
Oh, right. I love anybody else with that last part. The fact that he says, "What do you think you're doing, citizen?"
Citizen, right.
Slap across the face.
Right. Her references would still have been of the silent movies, the silent era. And in reading the relevant chapter in the Ayn Rand Companion, that would have been she picked all the best work, actually, I think, to be inspired by Fritz Lang's Siegfried. I still think that Fritz Lang would have been a wonderful director for the film of The Fountainhead, but he was under contract to another studio, and they were too much alike. I think they probably would have had a lot of sparks flying on the set.
Well, I think that's interesting. And that whole thing, let's just take it apart in terms of what's happening there. So there she is. He's on the train, and where's he going?
He's going south.
South. And why is he on the train? Right, he's sick, right? So he's got tuberculosis. Right. She's sending him off to the sanitarium, ideally, so he can get well, right? But now we know here, it's not like she's gonna be texting him every couple or that she can Skype him or anything like that. I mean, he's gone. She doesn't. So when I try to think about this scene and think of what is the most horrible thing that can happen to a person, and at least one of the most horrible things that can happen to a person is like losing a person you love, right? The idea, maybe I'll never see this person again. Maybe he dies maybe he doesn't get well. Maybe the train doesn't get there. Maybe he's anything could happen. Now all of a sudden they're separated. So I think of this as a point of just blind terror, and just as such a deep, almost dizzy, faint fear that she doesn't know if she can go on. And I think it's really well done. And of course with the train, both with the fact that they would travel by train after all, but also just that once the train's on the track, it's just going to keep going, and Leo is heading away from her.
It also foreshadows the end of the book.
Well, Don't spill the beans. So.
Thank you, Michael.
I've never read the book, so I don't know.
Or her melodrama being
right. Well, yeah, I remember the end of the book too. It's just all the parts in between that I had forgotten.
I've forgotten.
Yeah.
Well, I've forgotten all the parts in between and the end.
Yeah.
That is the theme of the book.
Right.
So there's this desperation now.
Yeah.
Right. Did Lindsay or Adele, did you have a sense of what was happening with Kira at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think she's overwhelmed by the situation and sad, and
yeah,
you know, I thought it was kind of dramatic, and
it was.
It was an interesting kind of trope to like have in there, like this sort of classic goodbye scene where, you know, the people are trying to be strong, and in the end, it's sort of like, well, this is just how I feel. Like, she allows herself in that moment to be overcome by her feelings and does the thing that she said, like you told her not to do, and then she does it anyway, just because she can't help it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't find it quite as melodramatic as you did, Michael. I was very, very moved by this sequence. It was like bone deep love and passion and parting, and the context is what she had to do in order to get him to the sanitarium.
Okay, yeah, maybe we should.
And that's not stated, okay, in so many words. That's the interesting thing. It's implied. When she meets with Andre earlier, you know that it's happened or it's going to happen, and then she's expected to do something for it, you know. So
I think that that Kira letting Leo leave and trying to hold on at the last minute is kind of paralleling his own personality, that she kind of subconsciously knows that he's stronger with her, and that without her, his physical weakness, having this illness, is kind of a metaphor for his spiritual weakness. And she's worried about losing him, not just maybe he could die, but also she could lose the fight to keep him where he belongs.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Very good point.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Well, we have throughout this chapter, obviously, we've got these major shifts now going on with everyone in this chapter. So, I mean, starting with the very beginning, then, how do we get to to Leo on the train? It was her last chance, and she had to take it. So, so we know what happens with Kira and Andre, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was pretty clear what happened.
Yeah, it is very clear. So
not only did it happen in this chapter, but it happens in the next chapter. So.
Yes, it does. So in this chapter,
yes.
What is the what did you think? What did you think of Kira? What did you think of Andre?
Well, I don't think it was a surprise.
No.
Based on their physical attraction to each other. I mean, obviously, Kira's in a struggle between Andre and Leo, and he can't make up her mind.
So you thought that this was a romantic encounter between Kira and Andre?
No, I think it was a physical encounter. But whether there was any romance involved, I don't know. I mean, I think that Kira is clearly attracted to Andre.
Why
and
else?
Has been throughout the entire book so far. I mean,
he's also desperate for the help that he can give her. I mean, she's already offered herself to someone on the street, so she's prostituting herself to Andre just in a different way because she knows that she can, like, that is going to be successful. So
Mm-hmm.
she has to go play the card that she feels like she has in order to get this thing that she needs to save Leo. So she's kind of,
she's trapped, right?
you know.
But for Andre, this is more than just physical. And the interesting thing is that the dialogue, Andre's dialogue becomes like short ellipsis, partial sentences, and inchoate because it's a struggle.
It is.
He's never felt this way before. And it's more than lust.
Well, what does he have? What is the struggle though? If he loves her, why can't he just?
Well, first of all, he's a party man, and this is the fissure. Is that he's in love with her, and he doesn't know how to express it. He doesn't know what to do, and not only that, but she's bourgeois in her background, and it's
absolutely.
It just how do you process that? He's trying to compartmentalize.
Yeah. What's the party line on romantic love, Adele?
Yeah, exactly. Romantic love kind of goes against his principles because it's something he wants only for himself.
Right.
Right. Right. So
I think what's brilliantly done is he has the intellectual stuff going on, or even in some of their conversation, the intellectual stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
All he's caring about is her touch, or her being feminine, like giving her something like sandals or a slipper.
Right.
It's very interesting that's the bigger things don't matter at all. Not at all, as far as it's just these little intimate touches that I think is interesting that Rand actually believes in that as well.
Mm-hmm.
When you're romantically involved, it's not about what you think or this stuff. It's just being touched the right way.
Right. You know, the apart from the it might seem irrelevant, but actually I'm reminded of what Ian McEwan said about the 1950s Nabokov lectures at Cornell. He was telling students how to read a book, but the advice applies particularly well to writers, which is his words were avoid the moonshine of generalization and fondle the details.
Okay.
And that's exactly what she does.
Well, there are some interesting details that I think give us clues as to what Kira's state of mind is when she's with Andre.
Did you orchestrate this?
What?
Did you two just orchestrate this? Charles and you? Right into it?
Yeah.
You give me too much credit.
My powers of subliminal messaging. Okay, so if you look at page the some of the details, right? When he is she's looking at, okay, so she's naked, right? Now, do you remember way back when she has her encounter with Leo? She has no modesty at all. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean just that with Leo, that her naked body is perfectly natural. But I noticed that here with Andre, she winds up covering herself. And I think that's a definite, as it's Charles pointed out, one of the details that she does feel some shame, I think. And also, when he asks her, though, he wants to marry her, right? Andre wants to marry her. And what is her reason that she says, no, I can't marry you? Remember?
I remember
her family. right?
Oh yeah, right. Yeah.
But of course, we already know that in her way of thinking, that for Leo, that her family was not a problem, right? That's in fact that she loved Leo and she was going to have that relationship, whether it was her family went along with it or not.
But I don't believe her at all.
Of course you don't. She's not telling the truth.
Right.
Right? So
it doesn't matter.
No.
She's going to marry whoever she wants to marry.
Yes, right. So, but this is what she's telling Andre. So again, right. I don't think that it's a question that she loves Andre. I definitely think that it's a question that she's doing this, and as far as she can tell, for Leo, because she's lying to him here, and she is making up, she's scapegoating her family. She's making up, just a red herring, I guess.
Yeah, I definitely don't think that she loves Andre in that way. She sees him through the lens of friendship and camaraderie. And I think that her conflict right now comes from knowing what the consequences of this will be, both for herself and for Andre. She knows that it's going to destroy Andre when he finds out, but ultimately she's choosing Leo's life.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, because she's not doing this cold-heartedly either. She's not thinking, I'm going to sacrifice Andre. That makes perfect sense. She knows very well the consequences, and she does, I think you're right, feel really bad about it.
Yeah, Andre, Leo is really her top value, and it's basically a whatever it takes attitude to save him. And it's nothing against Andre, but the level of intensity and passion is just not there with him. And there's one sentence that really struck me, is that the words were more or less to the effect that she found it very easy. Suddenly she found it very easy to lie. Mm-hmm. And this is a person who could not lie.
Right. So here we have another very important shift in Kira's character, sort of a breaking up of her integrity, as it were, in that regard. What's up with Leo? There's besides from him being sick, what else is going on with Leo?
In this chapter.
Yeah.
Well, I think Leo's ready to give up. I mean, I don't think he has any incentive to survive or carry on.
I think that's a good point, because it's like the man on the inside can't keep the man on the outside, or there's the man on the inside is checking out.
Right. And what in particular is wrong with Leo, apart from the tuberculosis, just in terms of his life and of his what is a major problem for Leo?
Well, he can't find a job, and he can't join the union, and he can't join the union because he doesn't have a job, so he's a catch-22.
Yes.
And he has nowhere to go and nothing to offer to anyone in the and so what's the point?
Right.
It's kind of like what's the point of living if there's no way to survive? And his circumstance is such, I think, that he's just willing to throw in the towel.
Yeah.
He's also maintaining a certain amount of pride in the process, because she's like really trying to, pull out all the stops and like grasp everything. Like she wrote to his family member, and then they wrote back and they were like, no. But then he's, upset about it, and he won't accept anyone's help. He doesn't want that. But I think it says something about the fact that like she's able to convince him to do something, and he, lets her eventually convince him, presumably because, she's like, really trying hard to get him to go do this thing, and it says that she won. So seems like there's this sort of internal struggle going on between the two of them in terms of just like, I think his pride versus her sort of sense of practicality about it.
Well, and it seems to be the way he repays her for all her effort is to sleep with another woman and to get drunk and carry on and totally embarrassed.
Yeah, but he doesn't know the extent of the efforts that she's making. I don't know. I can forgive him for that 1 week moment because he's like, I don't know what to do. And so I'm going to make out with this woman. Like, okay.
Earlier in the book, they established that they don't really want to know what each other is doing. You're not in the room together. They don't want to see you cook. They don't want to know where the money came from. They don't know what you did for work that day. They don't want to know about what actually is going on. And all of a sudden, Kira comes up with the money to pay for a very extravagant vacation.
Yeah.
In a sanatorium in the South, and everything's taken care of. And
right.
Must be suspicious. Where's she getting this money from?
Must be. Adele, did you want to? It's okay. Couldn't tell if you were meant to say something.
No, not really. But yeah, just that there's this, just like the tuberculosis is nascent within him, so is his moral downfall.
Interesting.
Good point.
Well, and we do have this issue of, as like Lindsay brings up, that, and Ron too. So he can't work, but he's still alive. So he keeps calling himself a kept man, right? And this is obviously something that's really, really bothering him. And then it comes up in several times. You think it's okay? You're making a martyr. Remember, you're making a martyr of yourself to keep me alive. And then here in this chapter as well, he says, it had not been easy to convince Leah to go. He said he would not let her or her uncle keep him. So this idea of perhaps, just let me die. At least I'll have some control over that, perhaps. But also just that anger, rightly so, at an inability to perform just a basic function of earning his living, and that he's got to be dependent on Kira for this. So there's this incredible series of betrayals that go on here, because Leo's betraying himself basically when he accepts her money, because to him, the aristocrat, he wants to be the master of his own fate, right? And Andre, of course, is betraying his principles wholly, right?
Right.
And so what I'm trying to figure out, I think Kira is being true to herself in large part, but in order to do that, she has to betray the two men that she cares about, right? Leo and Andre.
I think where romantic realism comes in, the train scene and all that other stuff, but the realism of them being, this is a train wreck. The society, the Soviet society, is destroying them.
Yeah. Yes.
And Rand is not shying away from, I know you really love these people, I know you really respect them, but they're going to really take a hit.
Yeah.
Their values that they're holding on to are also going to disintegrate.
Right.
No
if you were to look at it in symbolic terms, you could almost say that Leo was a symbol of the old Russia. Andre, a symbol of the communist future of Russia. And Kira is an individualist. And where do you go? With that, in that kind of society? Nowhere.
So she's being very realistic.
Yes.
The screws to them.
Yes, so it's tragic. It's very tragic. It's very sad here because this isn't the way any of us would expect any of them to act. Do you agree? Mm-hmm. Right, but yeah. These aren't the sorts of solutions that.
Where if it was a romantic work, in the sense of fantasy and imagination, you could still make it happy ever after, regardless of the setting.
Right.
But Rand's like, that's not real. That's not.
No. And no one would believe that, Michael. I mean, in the Soviet Union, unless Jocko Willink was inserted to, extract them from the Soviet Union, which, that would be really over the top.
They get over the border to Finland and.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I always, in the back of my mind, I have that. Oh, if they could just get over the border to Finland.
Yes. Yeah.
For a communist writer, you could just say, all of a sudden, flourishing happened.
Right.
The blue.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. In the there, right. Andre would be fine. Leo would become, a propagandist, and Kira would work on some kind of state projects, and they would just live independently and all have a group relationship or whatever it is.
The triangle.
The triangle.
Triangle. Yeah.
Just never works. Okay. So interesting, and then we get to this sad, right? The beginning of what's the inevitable train wreck at the end of this chapter.
There is one point that we didn't cover that I kind of believe in. I believe Kira loves Andre as well.
I think she loves him, as like Adele points out, as a friend. She truly loves him. Yeah.
To see that they're sharing is way beyond her, unless she has she could feel it. And I think she doesn't want to feel it because her mind's set on Leo. But I think because she's not having sex with anyone else. Mm-hmm. She ran away from the guys in the street.
Right.
Tried, it worked. This is a whole nother scenario.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think it's interesting if we look at the end of the next chapter, where we see a very, a more evolved, a different, a side of Kira that has convinced all of this happens, right? And there's that scene at the end between her and Andre that makes it look like Kira's at least accustomed herself to this particular affair.
Right.
Right.
Well, is it, Marilyn, is it really an affair, or is the absence of Leo driven Kira closer to Andre? And is she, I mean, I thought it was interesting that she sought out Andre in the afternoon of the day that Leo was returning, and had an encounter with Andre minutes before Leo arrived. I mean, it's just like, really? What is it that drove her to do that?
Anybody want to try that?
Well, I think they had plans later in the evening, and so she had to get up during the day. So she has to keep this relationship going, I think, because she's, I don't know, sometimes when you get embroiled in these sorts of situations, I would presume when you're using someone, like, when do you know how to stop? Like, so, I think she's caught up in this thing and she's not really sure, and she's still getting things from Andre. So, I think that is motivating her to keep this scenario going. And so in this case, like, I think she went that day because she was supposed to go later on, but Leo was coming, so she couldn't go, and she couldn't tell Andre, like, hey, can't make it tonight because my other boyfriend is coming back. So, you know, instead she has to like put on this outfit and go do the thing in the afternoon so that he's satisfied, and then she can go deal with this other situation that she has. I mean, I think that's just doing what she can do to like try to keep all the balls in the air without necessarily like everybody discovering what she's juggling.
Well, and I think it was interesting that they both asked each other if they were satisfied before she left, and neither one of them answered. So I have to assume that they both were, because they didn't kick one another out. And so I think that, and I was particularly interested in the fact that Andre noticed her dress and you know, took attention to the way she looked and paid attention to her. I don't remember Leo doing that in the past. So I think there's more to the relationship between Andre and Kira than we know right now.
What I found very surprising was that she becomes alpha and cruel with Andre, and I thought that characteristic was really like she's treating him like he's a bourgeois and she's the communist leader.
Yeah, she's a little sadistic.
Yes,
with Andre, and he seems to like it, to respond to that. Whereas she's a little masochistic with Leo.
Right.
An interesting duality there.
I think she's trying to keep him at a distance. She's only kind of being cruel to him when he's trying to tell her how much he loves her and how much she means to him, and she doesn't want to hear it because she knows that she doesn't feel that way back. And yeah, I don't think she wants to keep using him after Leo gets back. I think that she's just worried about what it's going to do to him ultimately when he does find out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I think she's trying to keep distance or create distance to, even I think for herself a little bit. I mean, I feel like they both have a sense that she's not totally in it. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, I think some of what they're saying or not saying is speaking to that. I mean, I think right when she leaves him and she's asking him if she's made him happy and her voice is pleading and wistful and tender, that to me is sort of like her in this moment saying like, am I doing a good job at this? Like, am I doing, like, is everything still here? Like, have I messed it up, or am I like, have I become known yet? Like, I think she's sort of worried about.
Or that she wants it to be worth it at the end, because she knows that it's going to have a horrible end, but maybe she can make him happy in the meantime.
I still think she's totally into it. Into the intimacy, but she's intellectually going like, I shouldn't be involved in this. But I believe she is, as far as how she internally feels. But
she's not dishonest. I mean, I think that normally, I mean, I think you're hitting on something there, because she's compartmentalizing, right?
Yeah. So we've got Leo. She's in love with Leo. We have sex. She has sex with Leo. And it's very much integrated into their romantic love. And I think one thing that she's learning here, as you all bring out, without trying to be cavalier, but now she's learning that what just sex is, without really that romantic involvement. And there's a little bit almost of post-lapsarian quality to it. I think that all of a sudden now I see, oh, well, sex, you can just have sex, and it can be pleasurable, and even and affectionate, but it's not tied in the way, she's not tied in, I think, the way she is with Leo, the man that she truly loves.
I don't know. I feel like there is a hardness about Kira in this chapter that I feel like if that was me and I was in that situation and that's what I'm doing, I don't know. I think you might develop this sort of attitude about it, like the distance. I think she's distancing herself also just from the whole scenario. So it's easy to put on the dress and to smoke a cigarette and to like lean up in the doorway and be like, hey. And I think that that is a really sort of typical traditional female role that I think every woman like knows and understands and can do, or can at least try to, which I think is what she's doing. Mm-hmm. No matter if it's comfortable or not for you, like it's one that you know. I mean, I don't particularly see her experiences with Andre being especially satisfying for Kira in any of the ways, really. I mean, they're not like intellectually great. Like they don't really seem to talk about anything. They're just kind of talking about what they're doing. But I also don't get the sense that she's like doing it because she's having fun and she wants to just have sex because it's fun and it doesn't have to be a big thing. And like,
I don't think that at all. I don't think she would do it in a million years, except that she's in this situation. But I think for her now, she's learning that there is a difference. I'm not saying that that's what she wanted to do. I mean, the don't bother to undress, I haven't the time. That's certainly
it sounds like something that James Bond would say,
Yeah.
right. So for her, I think that she does now she does know this now, that there's nothing that she can do. She has this knowledge now, and that is going to be part of who she is. And it wasn't before. That's all I meant. I didn't mean that she's seeking this out as some kind of fun experiment.
I mean, that makes sense. I think in the beginning, talking about how she didn't really think about her body and the placement of her body or the space that she existed. I mean, I think now she clearly understands her body and where it is and how she's placing it and what effect that can have. So there's just an awareness of herself as a physical being that I think didn't exist there. I see it from that perspective.
There's also a very interesting stylistic thing going on, and is the contrast between everything. So the contrast between Petrograd and Moscow, the contrast between the buildings and the
yes.
The contrast in character. There's contrasts that are quite brutal and extreme, very black. White is throughout that chapter, the beginning of the second part.
Right, when we get to the story of Petrograd, yes.
Intense conflict.
I thought it was interesting, Michael, that the only color in the city seemed to be that which was brought by humans and sold on the curbside. Right. Flowers and everything else just seemed to be this sort of bleak, dull gray. And that, I think, probably speaks to the way the people's attitude is about living there and the struggle that they go through on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting. Why does she start with that old Petrograd? Why does she tell us that story of St. Petersburg and then bring us up to the present day? What is she?
Well, because I think the old one was a glamorous place. I think the old one was, before the revolution, there were people that were successful and they had jobs and they had businesses and they were in some cases wealthy. Mm-hmm. And then when the revolution occurred, everything turned kind of nasty. gray. And
yeah,
they're all living in one room when they used to live in 20.
right. And then Lenin got shot and died, and then it became Leningrad. The interesting thing, because at the going back to the last chapter of part 1, remember that the opening line of the book, Petrograd smelled of carbolic acid. She almost repeats that sentence again when Leo is seen off on the train. The train or the train station, whatever, smelt of carbolic acid.
Right.
So she's actually particularizing it from Petrograd to the actual train station.
Train station.
Yeah.
Well, what about the origin? The origin of St. Petersburg. Remember what she says about it?
Well, I found it kind of puzzling. Like she said, like it was just created. It wasn't like a living. She talks about living cities grow, like Hong Kong, work, evolve. They're growing with people and quite naturally.
Yeah.
Where Petrograd just showed up. Dominant just showed up out of the blue overnight. There it was, fully formed, absolutely impenetrable there forever, or for the following generations. And I couldn't grasp the symbolism of that. I didn't get.
Yeah.
Well, she does talk about the will of a man raised it, where men did not choose to settle. So here again, I think she's using it, at least at the beginning, as a monument to, again, the human spirit, human creation. Here's somebody who comes in. It's a terrible place to live. No one wants to live there. That's why there haven't been any settlements, right? And he builds it right there. So, and and she obviously carries these builders forward in all of her work. So, but I think that aspect of it was something that is admirable, that she finds it, again, man conquering nature, conquering obstacles, building,
yes.
and not just a city, not just a hovel, but a sophisticated, worldly, aristocratic city.
Right. I found it very fascist.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's talk about that. Yes, that's a good point.
The description of it was just like just what you said, though, that it wasn't a place where people were meant to live, but someone just said it's going to happen.
Right.
Father of King Tut did that. He moved the capital to some place that was just arbitrary. And when he died, it just fell apart.
It just fell apart. Nobody wanted to be there. Yeah, in the same way, it wasn't like people thought, oh, great, this sounds like fun. I mean, they were forced to build it as well. So absolutely. So
Rand's writing that as well. So I think she's ambivalent about the value of it. She's just saying this is what the context is. This is where the city kind of came from. She might be doing what Victor Hugo did, where she just went on an aside to give us like a historical. This is how St. Petersburg came about.
Right. Notre Dame de Paris has an extensive historical backdrop to the cathedral and all that, and that reminded me of it. It's an interesting sardonic, I guess would be the word, history of it, because you can tell that she has, on the one hand, there's a kind of admiration. That's where she came from, so to speak, but it's also not really. I mean, it's a bit critical. I mean, it's when she wrote it, I mean, she was in a much better place, a place that she had always wanted to live, which was the U.S. So she's looking at it from a distance with a cooler eye,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think he was a fan of the aristocracy at all.
Yeah.
Or of the czar by any stretch of the word. So I found it very curious, though, that it took up a great, and I don't think she does things for just to show off.
No, I don't feel like it's just an aside or like a sort of tangent, like, you know, the whole part of Moby Dick, like about whaling. Like, I feel like it's kind of, she's really setting up a lot of differences between things that are hard and things that are soft. I mean, even the cities, she's got one that is hard, and then she talks about how Moscow is so wimpy, and
very nice.
I think, you know, there's that. I mean, I feel like the whole description of the statues of the horses, how there's like the progression from each statue of like the man who is taming the horse. Like, I think that sort of illustration right there in the city, or just taking the time to point those out, is saying maybe there's man versus nature, but I think then we're also transitioning right into kind of a man versus self. Like, how do you deal with human nature? Because that's what we're dealing with, and we have all these different sorts of hard edges and softness and strength and weakness. And so I think it's kind of effective to, like, you know, I think she's panning out for a minute and looking at the whole world, and then taking us into this very small, intimate world of these three people, but they are all dealing with these kind of same broad themes that I think are illustrated by the city. You know, dealing with something of being in a place that you don't want to live, and trying to, you know, conquer all of these things that are sort of naturally coming against you, and how do you do that?
And then she brings it down to the economy and just how awful, you know, things are. So she takes it from the general down to the particular. And then at the very end, Kira reemerges and she talks about Kira. But that's, she's beginning, it's a brilliant beginning. Because it shows how the lapse of time, the change of dictators, and presumably it's now Stalin in power, although she doesn't say that. And so she gives a little mini history, and that brings it down to people trying to survive. And you have these nice things. The only problem is that this nice thing is almost the same as this nice thing, and there's only 6 of them. It's like the old joke of Peter Sellers, try Platushka. It is the best cigarette in the Soviet Union. It is the mildest cigarette in the Soviet Union. It is the least expensive cigarette in the Soviet Union. It is the only cigarette in the Soviet Union. I still remember that one, but in the end it was true.
Yeah. So she, so this thing too about Petrograd does not need a soul; it has a mind, and so that there's these differences too between, as you pointed out, the soft Moscow, and then so how the old regime chose Petrograd for its capital, and the new regime is going to move to Moscow, and how we have these two very different worlds now, and these, as you point out very nicely, these people caught in it, and then the challenges, all the old palaces that are turned into like meeting houses or things like that.
One thing that it's come up is at the beginning of the book, it's so depressing. It's just wave after wave of just disease and suffering and poverty.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again. So this intro to the second part is monolithic.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like they don't say it's made out of marble, but it reminds me that everything is made out of rich material, and it's oversized, and it's very beautiful and luxurious and expansive. So it's very monolithic. So that's a big change from the beginning of the book. But I don't know what it means now. So I'm curious, like, what does that mean? How's that going to play out in the coming up? And I can't figure that part out. But I'm seeing it's
well, I definitely think there's a tone shift in the characters. I mean, I really liked this first chapter of the second part and how it like started so broadly, and I really liked the way that it came to Kira like lighting a cigarette. Like that to me was very, I was like, okay, well this is different now. Like I don't know, I think that tone shift kind of set up for me like things are different with these people. Like things are especially different within this person that we're following at least.
Do you notice other differences, Ron?
Marilyn, how much time do you think passed between book one and between the first series of chapters and book two? I mean, in that gap of time, how much time do you think actually passed? While Leo's out getting cured from tuberculosis and because it really doesn't say how much time passed.
Well, it said when he was leaving that it was 6 months. It said that he was leaving for 6 months, at least in her argument. And Kira's arguments with Leo, she was like, you have to go and it'll be 6 months, like all winter.
And it might have turned out to be 9. I thought I saw 9 somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was thinking maybe a year. That would give enough time for Lennon to get shot and die. Sorry.
That's okay. You're okay, Charles.
St. Petersburg being masculine. She talks about it in Russian language. It's a he, and Moscow's a she. And then it being monolithic. I'm wondering if that is preparing us for Kira making up her mind with an absolute certainty. I wonder if that's a hint. Instead of this just overwhelming, like, can I survive the next hour? Can I survive till tomorrow? Is that this monolithic thing, it has to be there for a reason. And I'm wondering, and she believes that I think Rand has written about that, where the background should be reflecting a little bit of the character's state of being.
So we might not know yet, but I think that it's there because it's there. You should keep it in the back of your mind, because she is intending that to be the to carry through the entire book, the story of.
And then in my mind, I'm like, why is that there?
So. Right. Yeah, and so I don't know either. I think that the points that she makes about it, the aristocracy, and then bringing it down to from an aristocratic to a proletariat city, that it was created, all at once, just by force, by will. So it's not something strictly admirable, although she admires the will of the individual person who got it done. And now, of course, we're in a city that nothing gets done without 15 different signatures and going through all kinds of things, right? And the goods are shoddy, and as you see, its status as a capital city will be diminished.
Yes. And so the implication is that the party will move to Moscow, and that Petrograd, St. Petersburg, Leningrad now will be demoted, and in which case things will be, if anything, harder there.
Yes. That's interesting too. And if things are harder there, then what happens to our What happens to our characters? What happens to that story? Because right now we can see the problems. And now in the next chapter, of course, Leo will come back, and we'll have to deal with that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had a teacher in my master's program who taught me Russian, and as a second language experience. And she was from St. Petersburg. And final class, we had a dinner. The whole class had a dinner at a restaurant not far from where I'm living at the moment. And she said that the biggest nightmare that she had a recurring nightmare. And the recurring nightmare is that she would have to go back to St. Petersburg. And she would never be able to get out again.
No, that's too bad.
Yeah.
I noticed, did anybody look at the pictures that I posted? If you had,
I did.
Yes.
I did.
I found interesting those old early pictures. And now I have no intention of saying that Russia was a paradise, because Tsarist Russia was very hard on a lot of people. It was no good government there. But what I noticed is that how distinct everyone was, how different their clothing was, how different their look was, how different there seemed to be still some capacity for individuality. And then as I moved further and further into the communist era, everyone's wearing the same clothes and everyone's wearing the same things. And I find that, again, that sense of change, a change of direction that could also be part of this story. And in terms of our three characters, does there come some bit of what happens to maybe their individuality, their ability to sustain who they are under the circumstances?
Right. Yeah, the freedom to own property, and to make choices and decisions, that's part of individuality. And that's one of the things that communist societies slap down on almost immediately. It's also true of the interior of China. Now less so, because China is becoming kind of quasi-capitalist, but there's still, you see more of it in Hong Kong. After the takeover, it's almost like the old Hong Kong, but not really. It's a lot more expensive, for one thing. So they're keeping a kind of a two systems thing, but I don't. That's kind of unstable. It's not the Hong Kong of the 90s and the 80s. Put it that way.
Okay. Well, anybody else want to add anything? We're just about out of time. Any last comments in terms of the story, the characters, Petrograd?
I'm afraid for them.
You're afraid. You should be.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I hope that Andre and Kira don't get caught.
Well, yeah, keep all of that in mind, because obviously, yes, they're in a very precarious situation, right? Everybody has risked nearly everything at this point.
Yeah.
When I wonder if the three of them come together.
We will see. In We the Living, they get out to Finland. Yeah.
No, the three of them have a scene together, like Francisco, Reardon, and Dagny. You know, where like, oh my God,
yeah. It's probably coming, Michael.
There's an interesting thought.
Okay, so next week then, yeah, we're getting deep into it now. Now everything is, just think of that train running on the track there. So everything's going to move very, very quickly here in terms of what happens to everybody. So the chapters 2 and 3 in part 2 for
Okay.
week. All right, it was great talking to everybody.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good
See
to meet you.
everybody next week. Bye.
All right.
See you. Bye.